Hi everybody, I'm Jack Reda with Future Pastimes, and I'm the designer of Cosmic Odyssey, which is the 7th expansion for Cosmic Encounter, published by Fantasy Flight Games. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about new aliens that are in that expansion. Now, there are 42 aliens overall in Cosmic Odyssey, which is the most of any of the expansions. It's almost as much as the base game. But 12 of those aliens are alternate timeline aliens, which means that they are actually alternate versions of existing aliens that were part of the Fantasy Flight lineup of aliens already. The other 30 aliens are new aliens, but even in those 30, there are some that were actually part of a previous edition of Cosmic Encounter, either the Eon edition for most of them, but even the Mayfair edition of Cosmic Encounter from the 90s. So I'm going to talk about all the different aliens, but I'm just going to focus on the green alert aliens for this expansion. There are 13 green alert new aliens, which is almost half of the new aliens. So a lot of aliens for new players to be able to grasp and dive right into the game without very much trouble. So I'm going to talk about what the aliens do, some about the design process itself, and then for those aliens that had not been published before, how they have evolved or changed or been reinvented completely, and some of the whys of that design process, plus any other fun facts that I can think of. So let's start off with our first alien, which is Assessor. Now, this is an alien that did show up in the Eon edition of Cosmic Encounter, and then in the Mayfair edition, it actually was turned into a Lucre alien. It wasn't originally a Lucre alien, but Mayfair decided to try to improve upon the Eon version, which itself was not a great alien. It was kind of, I don't know, it was not very exciting. It was taxing your ships and then kind of using them in different ways, but it felt like paperwork, so it just was not a very fun alien. And Lucre was an economy that is part of a variant to Cosmic Encounter, and so any of the Lucre aliens were just unique ways to gain or ways to use Lucre, mostly to gain. This version of Assessor is closer to the original, but I tried to make it a little more interesting and to fun to play and easy to understand. So the way this one works is after another player, as the offense or as an ally, sends more than one ship into an encounter, you use your power to draw a card at random from that player's hand, and you're going to place it face down on your alien sheet. The cards on the sheet are not part of the Assessor's hand, but they can look at them anytime they want. At the end of the encounter, if Assessor has 8 or more cards on their sheet, they get to choose one to add to their hand and then discard the rest. But also, when any other player would draw cards as rewards or as part of a new hand, you may give them a card of your choice from the sheet as a refund instead of one of the cards they would normally get. And that's what I think is what makes this version of Assessor so much fun, because you can help players out by saying, hey, you know what, let's be agreeable about certain things like invitations or where you're going to attack or what have you. And I can make sure that you get a pretty good card as a refund, or you can fill people's hand up with stuff that they don't really want. So that's really what makes Assessor useful, especially when you have aliens like, let's say you've got Pacifist in the game. They're really keen to get negotiate cards. And you've got a pretty good chance of having a negotiate card as one of the cards on your sheet as Assessor. So you can usually make deals with players, not official deals like, a colony for colony, but you know what I mean. Like, look, you invite me on and as part of the offense in this encounter when you attack, and I can make sure that when you get your refund, I've set this card aside and you're going to get it, which I like to do quite a bit. But you do occasionally, if you've filled up your sheet with cards, because it doesn't take very long. There's only so long that people can just send one ship into the encounter. You can end up getting a really good card a couple of times in the game as Assessor. So that is Assessor. I like it quite a bit. It's much more interesting and fun, I think, than the original version. Our next alien is Aura. This is another alien, just like Assessor, that had been part of the Eon catalog of aliens as well as Mayfair, but was not included, and that's because nobody really liked having Aura in the game if you were not the player who had Aura. Because the original Aura just had everybody playing with their hands face up until you got to basically the planning phase when you're choosing what card to play. But you had total card knowledge. So in a game with Mind, Mind hated to be in a game with the Aura because everybody had the same information as Mind. So this version of Aura tries to pay homage to that version, but making it a little bit more accessible. So as a main player, before ships are launched, you may use this power to place a card from your hand face up on the sheet. Each other player with a colony in your system or in whose system you have a colony must reveal all of their cards from their hand of that type. So if you reveal an attack card, everybody has to reveal all of their attack cards. If you reveal a negotiate card, likewise. If you reveal a flare, everybody shows you all the flares that they have. But not everybody, it's just those that have a colony in your system, which is a soft advantage for Aura because people maybe don't want to attack you unless they have to, because then they're starting to have to expose elements of their hand that they much would rather keep secret. Likewise, if people might help you to get a colony in someone else's system, so you have that soft advantage of being able to attract allies as the offense, because then you're going to be able to target that defensive player by having them reveal all of a type of card. And a little bit of the trade-off, of course, is that you do have to reveal at least one card, but that's usually not a big deal. If you've got a low attack card, you reveal that, and then everyone who's affected reveals all of their attack cards, which is a big deal. Another little curious element on there is that cards revealed by this power are not in the hands of their players and cannot be played. And then at the start of the planning phase, those cards return to their hands. So that's not going to have a major impact on most things, but for instance, somebody would not be able to play a force field that had to be revealed and was sitting face up on their sheet. So it can have some impact a little bit, just depending on how things go. Like anything, like a flare that could be played during the launch or the alliance phase, that's going to be restricted. So yeah, a little bit of a trade-off, but still pretty powerful and useful and fun to play. Our next alien is Booster. Booster was actually a promo from Escape Velocity, but it is now part of Cosmic Odyssey. This is when you have the power of Escape Velocity. When you launch ships as the offense or as an ally, use this power. If you launch 1 or 2 ships, discard that number of cards from your hand, if you have any, and then if you launch 3 or more, you draw a card, and then you discard 1 card. So this does a couple of things. It's really great for hand management. It's one of my favorite hand management aliens, because it lets you shed cards that you don't want to have in your hand. It also gives you the opportunity to add more cards and then optimize your hand, depending on the number of your ships. So you do have to think about what you're going to commit. If you've got really good cards in your hand, you're probably only going to send 1 ship so that you only have to discard 1. But if you're willing to be a little more reckless with your ship commitment, send 3 ships, then you're able to draw a card and then discard a card. So it's really useful for that. It's a fun alien to play. I love hand management, so I'm a big fan of Booster. Our next alien is Bubble, and this is a brand new alien. And it's an alien that makes use of reinforcements. It's something that I felt was not really leveraged very much by a lot of the other aliens. We're over 200 aliens in here, but a very small number of them use reinforcements in interesting ways. So I wanted to add another one that did that, and that is Bubble. So you have the power to pop. As a main player or ally, before encounter cards selected, you may use this power by announcing "Let's Pop" or by making 2 pop sounds. Then instead of selecting an encounter card, the main player in your hand can select a reinforcement card to play as an encounter card. And what it says here is that anytime a reinforcement is revealed as an encounter card, first of all, it counts as an attack card of whatever its value. So if you revealed a reinforcement +5, it counts as an attack 5. And then what happens is that everybody on your side of the encounter can then play 1 attack card from their hand as a reinforcement, equal to its value. And then they can still play reinforcements normally. And this does a couple of things. Again, it can make those reinforcements really valuable because it lets you play them as an attack card, but the range of attack cards that can then be played as reinforcements is much, much greater than the range of reinforcements cards. So you're able to play, an attack 20 as a reinforcement if you need it. So if the bubble is on your side of the encounter and there's a lot of players there, there's a potential for massive numbers on your side. It also has the soft advantage of, even if you or whoever is the main player on your side doesn't have a reinforcement, the other side doesn't necessarily know that. So you can still say, let's pop, which is when somebody would have to cosmic zap you. So not knowing if you can even play a reinforcement or what the encounter cards, the attack cards that you could play as reinforcements would even be. But a lot of times what will happen is when you do that pop, the other side knows that if there's a lot of players on Bubble's side, the potential for playing attack cards as reinforcements is very high. So they'll punt on that encounter. They'll negotiate, or they'll just play a low attack card. And even if you just reveal an attack card, that's sometimes all you need to win. So that's how Bubble works. Our next alien is Decoy. Decoy, very simple concept. As a main player, before encounter cards are selected, you may use this power to play an encounter card face up on this sheet. And then what happens is you put, as Decoy, you put an encounter card face up, and then you play one normally. When you reveal it, you decide which of those two cards is going to be your revealed encounter card, because you can switch their places. So it gives you some alternatives. It lets you say, all right, I'll play a low card and a high card, and we'll see which one I need, or I'll reveal a negotiate card so I know that I can negotiate if I need to, especially if the other player has made overtures for a possible deal. At least this way, as a show of good faith, you can say, all right, there's my negotiate card. I have one. And if you don't end up revealing one, then my other card can be an attack card and we can fight it out normally. So I love that it gives that player that flexibility. Now what happens is that once you have decided which card is going to be the encounter card, the other player is going to decide on the disposition of the card that you don't use, the one that's on your sheet. Either they're going to take it, they're going to make you keep it, or they'll discard it. So there's a little bit of a power play there. I also like to use it as an incentive, and I'll say, look, we make a deal. I'll put a good card here, which you can then just take. Or again, in a situation where, let's say that you're in the game with Reserve, who likes to have low attack cards, or Pacifist, who wants negotiate cards, or Diplomat, who wants to negotiate cards. You can say, all right, you can have two negotiate cards. You can say, you make this deal and I'll let you keep the other negotiate card, which is something I know that you want. So it's looking for those opportunities with an alien like Decoy that you can take advantage of here. And the artwork is a little bit of a nod to the Horde alien, which their heads kind of looked like peeps. And so this was actually this final art was very similar to the fake art that I had mocked up for our playtest in TTS. So I was really happy that they took advantage of that look. Our next alien, another new alien, is Guardian. Another super simple concept. Guardian only works as an ally, but they've become a very attractive ally, especially for a main player who is willing to commit a good number of ships. So as an ally, after encounter cards are revealed, use this power to change the value of your ships for encounter totals. Each of your ships is worth the number of ships that the main player on your side has the encounter. So if the main player has 4 ships and you've brought 4 ships, each one of yours is worth 4. So you are adding 16 as an ally. If they brought only 2 ships and you brought 4, then each of yours is worth 2. That would have been 8 ships. So you as the Guardian, to get more bang for your buck, you got to send a good number of ships, but so does that main player. So when they launch as the offense with 3 or 4 ships, you make a very attractive ally, and you know that they're committed to going in there as well. So that's how Guardian works. Inferno is another brand new alien. Inferno, in many ways, is the Vault of Flares. So the way Inferno works is there's actually 5 extra copies of the Inferno Flare, and you're going to shuffle those into the deck after everyone has dealt their initial hand. So somebody might have the original Inferno Flare in their opening hands, but there could be up to six Inferno Flares in the rest of the Cosmic deck. And so after another player plays a flare and attempts to put it in their hand, you may use this power to take it instead. So it turns the flares into one-shots. And then when you have no encounter cards and would discard your hand to draw a new one, reveal any flares in your hand, set them aside, draw your new hand, and then add the set-aside flares to your hand. Furthermore, let's talk about those Inferno flares. The wild for the Inferno flares lets players basically discard flares to add huge amounts to their total. But then they have to give that flare to Inferno. And then the super says, if any time you have 5 flares in your hand and 2 of them are Inferno flares, you win the game. So you really have to watch out about playing flares, and especially the Inferno flare when Inferno is in the game. It's one of these alt-win aliens that actually is probably one of the easiest alt-win aliens to win with their alternate win. So I like Inferno. Again, this is another one. I really love the artwork on there. I believe this is a Felicia. She does a great job with so many of these aliens, capturing the sci-fi element, a little bit of the whimsy as well. And again, it's reminiscent of the image that I plucked off the internet to use for our playtesting. All right, this brings us to Magnet. Now, Magnet was an alien that has been part of Cosmic Encounter since the very early Eon days. It's actually the first alien that I ever played when I played Cosmic Encounter. But the reason it had never been included up till now is because Kevin Wilson felt that Magnet was one of those aliens that took away a little bit too much player agency, because the way the original Magnet worked was they could force a player to ally with one side or the other, or they could basically kick a player out of the alliance. Not a main player, but one of the allies. And that was a bridge too far, I think, for Kevin, and we tried to respect that as well, which is why we made some modifications to this version of Magnet, and here's how it works. Power to attract or repel. As a main player or an ally, after alliances are formed, you may force this power, or not force it, you may use this power to force one offensive ally to become a defensive ally, or vice versa. So the way that it differs is that if a player didn't want to be an ally at all, they can still not be an ally. They know now that if they do join one side or the other, that there's a chance that the Magnet could push them to the other side. And they cannot use their power on themselves. There's a second part, though. It says, as a main player or ally, after alliances are formed, if you did not use the previous power, so if you have not forced a player to move from one side or the other, you may use this power to force one player in the encounter to match the same number of ships that you have in the encounter by moving ships to or from their colonies as appropriate, which is a little bit like what the original Crystal did. And the original Crystal was nobody's favorite alien, and Kevin Wilson very wisely modified it to something completely different when he included Crystal in the game. So this is a little bit of a nod to that old Crystal as well, and it beefs up Magnet to give it some more flexibility. So you could say, all right, I'm going to force one player to the other side, or you could just say, look, I've brought 4 ships, you bring 4, or I only brought 1, so you can only bring 1. So, and again, the players have enough agency where they can say, look, they know the risks of joining the encounter. If they don't join the encounter, then they're not going to be affected by Magnet at all. So that, I think, was a pretty good solution for the problem. Our next alien is the Meek. Now, this is an alien that I like quite a bit, but I do have to confess that the wording could have been better. So I'll tell you what it does, and then I'll tell you what it's supposed to do, and then you can sort it out from there. So the way that the Meek works is, as a main player, when you lose the encounter, use this power to advance your colony marker. Failing to make a deal is not treated as a loss. And when you win an encounter, you use your power to move your colony marker back. So that's what it says. And what it's really supposed to be doing is that if you win an encounter as a main player, you should be treating it as if you lost. And if you lose as a main player, you should be treating it as if you won. So really what it should have done was, when you lose as a main player, you get a colony, in any other player's system or in the opponent's system or whatever the case may be. That's how it should have worked. It should have just left the whole colony marker thing alone. I know that there are some crotchety grognards who refuse to even use the colony markers. Back in our day, we didn't have a colony marker. We just had to pay attention to who had however many colonies, and they still play that way. Although, I personally don't have any issue with it. I like using it. I like to leverage existing components I can in some of the design work that I do. But here, how it should have been written would have been able to please everybody. And then, yeah, when you win an encounter, you would just lose those ships as if you had won. So now that you know what it's supposed to do, because the idea is that Meek can still, the Meek can still advance their score by joining as an ally. They're not prevented from doing that. And so as the Meek, it's actually easier to get to 5 colonies because you can advance your score as a losing main player, as the losing defense. So you're playing the game a little bit differently, which anyone who knows me as a designer knows that's my jam. Finding a way for players to play the game differently from everyone else appeals to me, and Cosmic Encounter really lends itself to that too, with a lot of the alt-win aliens are playing their own game and then trying to integrate with what everyone else is doing. So that's how the Meek works. It's actually a lot of fun to play. I really enjoy the kind of kamikaze approach to that. And the other players are like, oh, do I actually try to lose this encounter because I don't want to help the Meek? So that's how that one works. All right, next up we have Phantom. Now, Phantom actually was an alien that was first published as part of Mayfair's edition. So it was a brand new alien for Mayfair. There are not a lot of Mayfair aliens that are part of it. There's a decent number of them. And this one, there was never an issue with it. I think, if anything, it was considered maybe not quite strong enough. So we have made this version a little bit stronger. Here's how it works. At the start of the game, you're going to put one of your ships from each of your planets on the alien sheet. So you'll have 5 ships on your sheet. As a main player, after cards are revealed, use this power to add 2 to your encounter total for each of your ships on this sheet. And now your ships in the encounter do not add to your total, but they do count for compensation or rewards normally. So what that means is, if you've got the 5 ships on your sheet and you're in an encounter, it doesn't matter how many ships you brought, you're just going to add that 5 to your attack card. And then if let's say you brought 3. You brought the 3. Those 3 ships are at risk. If you lose, those 3 were the ones that'll go to the warp. But you're actually not counting those 3. You're just counting the 5 on the sheet. And actually, that would be a 10 because each ship is worth 2. So 10 is much better than 3. You can send just 1 ship. So you're only risking 1, but you're adding 10 to that total, and that works as the defense as well. It doesn't work when you're an ally. When you're an ally, your ships add normally and they're at risk normally. Now, when your ships would return to colonies, you may place 1 or more of them on the sheet instead. So you're not stuck with those 5. And in fact, you can move ships off of your sheet whenever you are sending ships into an encounter. So you can build up the number of ships on your sheet. Let's say you've got 8. Now you're adding 16 to your totals rather than however many ships you have in the encounter. So the original, of course, was you just added 1 for each ship. So it's twice as powerful, this version of Phantom. It can be very, very powerful. I really like that as well. All right, Tentacle is another new alien, a real simple alien. When they're a main player or an ally, after encounter cards are revealed, they use their power. They choose one of the revealed encounter cards if it has a numerical value, and they add the value of each digit of that number to that side. So the example they give here is if you've revealed a 15, well, 15 is composed of a 1 and a 5 in terms of the digits to represent that number. So you would add 1 and 5 to your total for a 21. So what that does is actually it makes sort of the median range of the value of the attack cards goes up quite a bit. So 15 to a 21, that's nice. That's like a reinforcement plus 6 right there. If you reveal a 9, well, now you're adding 9 more. So that's a big deal as well. So since Tentacle works as a main player or an ally, they've got that flexibility. And they can do that with the card on either side. So, if you've got a thing where you've got Daredevil in the game and you want to try to win by only a small amount, that can help with that. It can help with with Antimatter or with Loser or stuff like that. So very flexible, very simple to grasp alien. I like that. Vector, another simple alien. Power of Direction. After you accept an invitation to become an ally, use this power to choose which side of your Vector token to turn face up. Either its normal or its reverse side. So it comes with a little Vector token with the art. And the way that works is you gain the effect of winning the encounter based on which side of your vector token is face up. So it lets you basically get the opposite reward. So if you're an offensive ally, normally if your side wins, you land on the planet. And if you're a defensive ally, you get rewards. This lets vectors switch that up. So they can get rewards as the offense, or they can land on the planet as the defense. It's super simple, and I know a lot of people like to criticize it, like, oh, it's just no power or whatever. I mean, and yes, you can tell people, I'll keep it with the normal side up, and then after you ally, you can screw them over. I'm not sure how long you'd be able to get away with that sort of thing, and then you have to think about the whole meta game. But I like to leverage vector as a way to join the offense when maybe I have more colonies than they do. You don't typically get invited by the offense. If they're at 2 colonies and you're at 3, they're like, I'm not going to invite you. But you can say, look, I'll just vector over the other way, and I can still help you. Likewise, a lot of times, people are interested in joining the offense because that's how you advance your score. And sometimes the defense is really desperate for allies. And you can say, all right, I'll come along, but I'm going to vector to be able to land on that planet. So just be aware of that. And Cosmic Encounter at its best is when it's at its most social. And so I think to really leverage vector, you've got to be one of those social players. And it works for me really well. I mean, I'm able to do really well with vector. That's why I like it. So your mileage may vary. And then finally, our last one is Rack. Now, Rack was an alien that was part of the original Eon editions. It was the power to torture, but I think, the original designers, Peter and Bill, they were not as anxious to recapture the torture element. And the way that the original Rack worked was when they were in an encounter as a main player, before you even played cards or did any of that. In fact, instead of playing your encounter cards, you basically would describe a deal to your opponent, and it could be a terrible deal for them and a great one for you. And if they didn't accept it, then you would lose one of your ships from the encounter, and then you could describe another one, but one of their ships. But if they never gave in, then they would win the encounter. And so you could torture them a couple of times and then offer something that was a reasonably good deal, and it was okay. This one's much simpler. The way it works is, as a main player or an ally, after a player on the opposing side plays a card, you use this power, and they have to send one of their ships to the encounter. So you're needling them every time they play a card, including their encounter card. But if they play reinforcements, or they play a flare or an artifact, they are getting punished for it. They're having to lose a ship each time they do that. What is interesting, though, is that the super flare effect for this version of Rack is essentially the original Rack ability. So that's still in there. I didn't want to throw it out completely. So it's the super effect. It lets you describe a deal and torture the other player until they relent. But if they never do, then they will win the encounter. So you've got that in there. So those are the green alert aliens. Like I said, all these are pretty accessible concepts. So new players, once they've got the basics of Cosmic Encounter, which are also very easy to grasp, they can play with these aliens. And you've got a good number of them to add to your collection of aliens. So I'll talk about the yellow and red alert aliens in other videos. Let me know what your favorite new aliens are in Cosmic Encounters, Cosmic Odyssey expansion, what your favorite green alert aliens are, period. What you think of the changes to some of the originals, if you agree or disagree, and why. And anything else that you want to see a video on, I'm here at your disposal. Happy to talk about anything on all things Cosmic Encounters. So thanks for watching.